So why don't we go ahead and get started? And this evening, I apologize. I have a head cold. I've been sick the last couple of days, and so um, if I cough or whatever, I apologize for that. Trying to stay on top of it. So um, let's go ahead and just get comfortable and find a position that works for you to be mindful and alert, not too sleepy. And if you do lay down, to go ahead and put a pillow or a bolster under your knees just so your lower back will drop. That'll make you a little more comfortable. And so you can just close your eyes or look softly at the floor. And just taking a couple of breaths, allowing yourself to just arrive. Just let yourself find your way to the cushion or the chair or the floor. And you can begin by just breathing out any tension you're noticing or holding in your body. Allowing yourself to just begin to empty and relax. Paying mind to notice and release any tension you're feeling in the body, any bracing or holding. Even if you have pain, you can let yourself release that as well on the out breath. Just breathing it out gently. And also clearing out any busy thoughts. It's okay that they're here. You just don't need to hold on to them. So we allow them to arise and pass away. We can do the same with our feelings, just noticing what's here. Conditions are such for today, but not holding on to them. And by doing this, I invite you to come into a flow to where sensations, thoughts, or feelings arise and pass away. And letting yourself just feel the flow of this. Nothing stays too long, particularly if we don't grasp at it. And so rather than paying attention to the content, we start to pay attention to the flowing. Energy flows out of our body. Heat flows out of our body or rises off the top of our body. And we have a choice here. We can be a witness watching the flow, or if we like, we can let ourselves be the flow. Let go of me for a moment, the story of me, and just experience yourself as flowing. There's much more freedom in this flowing. Just flowing like a river on a summer afternoon. relaxing into the flow. And letting this flow get as big as it wants. Just flowing. Not holding on to anything and being totally okay. Knowing ourselves in this way. Just this. Just letting the flow carry you on this summer day. So, this evening I'd like to share about the spiritual domain, which is actually my favorite, probably my favorite domain. And I wish, I had like a whole week that we could do a retreat on this and have it be all experiential. And then you'd have all these great experiences. But unfortunately, we don't have that time tonight. So maybe later. But what I want to do is just kind of map this domain a little bit and then do an exercise for you just so you can, again, have your own map of your own mind with this domain. So the spiritual domain is not necessarily, I'm not talking about religion. The spiritual domain is our beliefs and ideas about that which is beyond everyday life or the cosmos. And so any way in which you orient that becomes your spiritual story, your spiritual life work about that. And for many of us, the spiritual domain calls to us sometimes out of curiosity, but a lot of times it calls to us because there's something not quite right with our daily life. There's something not quite satisfying. So we may feel an emptiness about life, and so we go on some kind of questing to answer that. We may feel a restlessness, like there's something broken about me, something not home, something not good enough. And or we're looking for meaning for life. And often, so this domain often pulls to us out of a suffering kind of place, sometimes curiosity, but a lot of times out of a restlessness inside us. And to do that practice, we may pray, we may meditate, we may look at quantum mechanics and science and try to figure out the answer to the cosmos, those kinds of things. Is there a God? Um, but all the practices that we do pulled forward are pulling us towards this yearning to know. And any of the kinds of practices we do can open us to special experiences, which then for a lot of people feel like, oh, well, there's an answer for me, or that makes, I can understand given that experience. So there are three ways that we do this path of exploration. Okay. The first way is concentration. And that's when we do intense prayer, intense meditation practices. We go on retreat for 4 days or a week or a month or a year, something like that. So concentration. And again, all three of these that I'm mentioning all have an aspect of mindfulness to them. So in concentration, we're practicing mindfulness, we're cultivating our mindfulness, and we're focusing our attention, kind of blocking out the noise of the world so that we can really see. That's what we're trying to do with concentration. The other path that gets us some answers is the path of relaxing or opening, releasing, letting go. And that's so rather than a concentration and a forward practice, instead we let go. We stop fighting. We stop grasping. And we just kind of see what happens when we let go. And so we did that tonight with our sit. We were doing a flow practice, letting go, just being carried, not knowing. And the third way that we often open is by being blown open. That's often a very surprising way, right? And that can happen because of a trauma that happens or sometimes exhaustion. We see this on the hero's journey. Right at the moment where the hero's giving up is exactly the moment that, the veil is thinned and the answer appears. So trauma, exhaustion, also moments of great beauty. Sometimes you can come around the corner and see a sunset that just pierces you, or seeing the birth of a child. Some kind of surprise. This is when our ego is caught off guard, right? Something happened where our usual vigilance wasn't there and something just pierced us for a second and something kind of broke through. And so in all these examples, what we're really talking about is where the veil between us and the world thins. So these are what spiritual experiences are. When the veil thins, and when that happens, we may, for instance, see energy or see colors or see the world the way we don't normally see it. We may literally see and know for ourselves, feel it in this deep sense, the interconnectedness of the world. Suddenly everything is connected. Everything is made of one energy, or we see the connections between everything. We may feel a sense of oneness, that there's no duality anymore. There's no me in the world. There's just one. There's just one source. And another way that we have a breakthrough when the veil thins is we have insight or see truth. And so we may come to know something, have a clear seeing about the world. Sometimes it can be a premonition. Sometimes it's just a truth of what we know about. People might say, I knew someone who said, the world is made of love. I know this. Everything is made of love. And they saw it and they experienced it, and nothing was ever going to change that for them. Once we have these kinds of insights and experiences, our outlook has changed forever, often. No one can convince you otherwise. You saw it, you experienced it, you heard it for yourself, and you now know. You now know. And it reminds me of a comment with my teacher once. I said something like, I want to know what you know. I want to have faith in what you believe in. Something like that. I said that. And she burst out laughing. And she said, I don't have faith. I know. I just know. And I said, well, then I want to know what you know. And she burst out laughing again. And she said, I died. I had a near-death experience. You do not want to know what I know. I was like, no, really, I do. I want to know. So maybe without the near-death experience, but I wanted to know what she knew. Yeah. So we can have these experiences, these awakened experiences, enlightenment experiences. In Zen, they're known as Kensho experiences. A moment where the veil parts and we see something amazing, something pierces us, and we want more, or we want to live there. But oftentimes the veil closes, and then we have this regret and grief about, wait, I want to live there. I saw something. I want that to be true. I'm reminded of Suzuki Roshi had this teaching where somebody asked him about enlightenment and how enlightened he was. And he said, when I first started, he said, here's the veil. He said, when I first started, I had this. And I went, oh, that's amazing. Ooh, that's amazing. And he said, and then it was more like this. And he was like, and that was amazing. And he said, today, it's more like this. Mostly an awakened mind with a moment of ego here and there, right? Crashing through. So may we all kind of have a little more of that. So once we've had these experiences of love or clarity or whatever it is we may have had, a lot of times we like to think, well, that should change my whole life, or am I awakened or enlightened? And most of the time, what has happened is we've only gotten what is called the view. And I don't mean only, it's an amazing experience. But the view doesn't transform us. The veil closes and we're still left with ourself. And so our viewpoint might be changed. And we may never go back to the way we were thinking the world was. But it doesn't mean that we necessarily live an awakened life. And so that brings us to the next piece of a spiritual practice, which is the path. So once we've had the view, we then have to engage in the path. The path is often, we're called back because we just want that great moment again, or we just want that kind of insight again. And we start searching. How can I get there? For instance, a lot of people feel restlessness before they encounter their own essence or essential nature. And then once they encounter that, there's this rest and ease. But people say, okay, but how do I live there? I want to live there. Why can't I live there? And as we've said before, we can't live there because we have so many formations. We have so many stories and beliefs about who we are that they get contacted and triggered every day. Something happens and your 4-year-old pops open. You see a birthday cake and your 4-year-old pops open. So we have so many ways that we get contacted and these thousands of formations inside that we get pulled off of our attention to our essential nature or to beauty or to a moment of love. And so there we have to start a kind of purification or clearing. We want to start to release the formations so that it's not so noisy inside, so that there is that peace and ease that we know is right there in the background. But we want to come to live there more. So we do that in two ways. We release our formations and our identity to them. We often think that my 4-year-old is me. Well, that's me at 4. But if you've done any of the release work, you start to realize, no, these are just memories. It's not me. In fact, I often ask the question when somebody is releasing, are you shrinking, fading, or dying as this is happening? And the person says no. And that's your proof that it's not me. Because if this 4-year-old leaving was me, I'd be shrinking as they go. And I've never had anybody shrink away. Nobody's ever shrunk yet. I haven't lost anybody. In fact, most people say, I feel more expansive. I feel more in my essential nature. I feel bigger, right? That's because we come out of the box of the story, the contraction from the story. So on one hand, we're losing our identity to our formations. We're letting it go. I know that these stories, I know the 4-year-old inside is not me. And we're releasing our fear. Our fears around our formations, our fears in clinging to our formations. We start to just let formations go much easier. Sometimes, in my practice these days, I can do a release sometimes in 30 seconds. I'll be standing somewhere, something gets opened. I ask, is Essence feeling this way? Nope. And then I turn to it and I say, where would you rather be? Because you need to go, girlfriend. And I release it. I can feel the energy releasing out of my body. Right there as I'm driving, standing in line at the grocery store, whatever it might be. It becomes very quick to release formations after a while. So this becomes our spiritual practice, some way in which we both clear the formations and our attachment to them, and we also take time to practice being in our essential nature, meditating, being with being or the divine, our prayer, whatever cultivates us in that way. Once we get to a certain level of comfort with all of this, then our practice shifts to another level. And that's where we start to trust essence. We start to trust our essential being, our essential nature. And we begin practicing living from that place. We begin allowing essence to carry us, to make choices, right? Rather than I just check in with essence, oh good, I'm not suffering. We start to live there a little more. And sometimes we can do this just in really light, playful ways. For instance, I love to use essence when I'm doing Christmas shopping or birthday shopping. I'll just walk down the street and I'll say, where should I go? Tell me where to go. And it goes, go in this store, go here, do that. And I'm amazed at what happens. Sometimes I go in a store and the gift is right there. Sometimes I go in the store and the gift's not there, but there's somebody there I haven't seen in 20 years. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's you. Hi. And so that becomes a lovely afternoon, right? Kind of like Essence vacations or something. You could do that for an afternoon. Let Essence run your life, see what happens. Just for play. So we start to play with essence. We start to take it a little more seriously. And we can then do mindfulness practices as essence. So for instance, we let essence eat. We do mindful eating. How does essence eat? How does essence chew? How does essence walk? I was with a group of people yesterday who were talking about finding the right rhythm of their own walk. Not walking to get somewhere, not walking because you're stressed, but letting your body slow down to find the rhythm of walking that is natural to you. Letting essence walk, letting essence move or dance. And so we start turning over to this inner essential nature. Again, just playing with it, but it begins to kind of shift our identification from ordinary mind and our formations to that quiet space within. And we start moving and walking and talking like somebody who's not in a hurry, like somebody who has all the time in the world, because essence does. Essence isn't living in the stressful world that ordinary mind is living in. We can also do this in our meditation. So some of you may be familiar with the meditation I've offered before. I call it either chrysalis or cocooning. And this is where you just go into meditation and you are in essence and you let the body just begin to release without knowing what the stories are. And suddenly you can feel, when you really are letting go, you can feel energy building, getting hot, heating up. And all of a sudden you start feeling energy releasing out of the body and you don't even know what it is. But you trust essence. You trust this process. And sometimes there'll be big shakes. The body will convulse for a minute and you'll feel something release out of your body. And so we move into more not knowing and trusting the path, trusting the unfolding that's happening. And in this way, we allow essence to begin to carry us, kind of like I did in the sit tonight, where I said you could be flowing and you could watch flow, or you could be flow. And then at one point I said you could let flow carry you. And this is a real letting go at that level, because we don't know where it's going. We're starting to let go of control of where it should be. So I want to go ahead and do a little practice tonight. Right here at this place where I'm talking about a real deeper letting go. And we stop clinging to the story of me. We stop being so interested in the story of me. And we start being more interested in the moment-to-moment unfolding that's happening in our body, in our meeting with the world, walking with the flowers in the forest, walking down Main Street. It can be quite beautiful to have a spiritual practice and turning over to our spiritual practice as we're just in the world. I'm reminded of the Dalai Lama using this phrase. It's been attributed to other people as well, but at one point he used it. And he said, one comes to be in the world, but no longer of it. So one is in the world, but not swept up by the stories and carried by the drama anymore. One begins living in a flow that's more authentic to yourself, to your true nature, to who you are. So let's do a little practice around this. So this is where you can have some paper and a pen. And what I want to do is just look at some of your responses or reactions to some common spiritual ideas. And again, this is just going to give you an idea of your relationship with the spiritual domain. Where does it flow for you? Where do you get stuck? What formations might be here that you need to let go of? Because they're going to influence your spiritual domain as well. So go ahead and just have a piece of paper ready and a pen, but you can put them down for right now. And there's no right or wrong answers. These are just for you. This is just for you to go, look what comes up when I meet that. Yeah, so just close your eyes for a moment, take a couple of clearing breaths. And we're just erasing the blackboard, coming into neutral. And notice what happens when I say meeting God. If you were to meet God, what reaction comes up? And you can take a moment to just jot that down. There may be comfort, there may be fear, whatever arises. And then go ahead and put your pen down for a moment. And again, just closing your eyes, taking a couple of clearing breaths for yourself. And what comes up when I ask you to let your guard down? Let your guard down. Notice the sensations and feelings that happen. If it could talk, what would it say? And then go ahead and take a moment to write that one down. There might be relief or there might be fear. I might get attacked. And then letting that go, coming back to neutral. Notice what happens when I say, just be. Don't do anything. Just be. No doing. And you can write that down. And then you can let that one go. And again, coming back to neutral. Do not improve yourself. Just as you are. No improvement allowed. And notice what comes up with that. And you can write that down. And then you can let that one go and come back to neutral. Just breathing out any tension or fear you had with that one. And notice what happens when I ask you To stand in the unknown, not knowing what's coming next. What's it like to not know what's coming next? To just be in the unknown. Let yourself be there in the unknown. How comfortable is it to not know what's coming next? What are you afraid of or uncomfortable with if it's not comfortable? And then you can write that one down. And then you can let go of that. We'll just do two more. Is coming back to neutral. What comes up when I ask you to let go of me and be part of the one? There's only the one. And what's it like to be part of the one or the all? And you can write down what came up for you there. And then letting go of that one and coming back to neutral once more. What comes up for you when I mention death, dying, you dying? And you can write that down. And then you can take a moment to just come back to neutral once more, just to clear all that away, resting in essence or quiet, or not knowing. So, as it is in all the places that we've explored so far, anywhere that you have these sentences, there's actually a formation there. And so you have an opportunity to go and release any formations or any beliefs here that are keeping you in some kind of fear, keeping you stuck. Because in order for the veil to thin, we have to be willing to be with not knowing what's coming next. We have to be willing to let go of me and my story. Anytime we're clinging to that, no, me, my story, my existence, we can't penetrate, we can't let go of the boundaries that allow us to expand into a different view, a different point of view. And one of the interesting things about the spiritual domain that I love, about our relationship, our internal story with the divine, is that a lot of people don't recognize it, but it's actually based off of the social relational domain. And so, how one sees God or sees the divine often is colored by the attachment issues, the stories you have about your parents and about um, how you belong in the world. So you might go back and even look at those stories a little bit. I remember one time, I've told this story before, where I was out on a camping trip and all the chores were done and it was a beautiful starry night. And somebody suggested to the group, why don't we get our sleeping bags and we'll just lay out under the stars? And so a group of about 5 or 6 of us did. And we were laying under the stars and it was quiet and beautiful and everybody was just enjoying the peace and the ease. And it was yummy. And then we were there for a long time in the silence. And suddenly you hear somebody in the dark says, what if a comet came out of nowhere and just killed us right now? They just like saw an attack, right? And somebody else goes, what if there's nothing up there and nobody cares about us? And all of a sudden I'm listening and I could hear everybody's fears projected onto the unknown, right? And so we don't realize that we have these really early young formations that are coloring. Is it okay to let go? Is it okay to meet God? Is it okay to stand in the unknown? What's going to happen to me if I do? And if you get curious about those and release those as formations, you get to come back to essence and ask, is essence afraid of being attacked? Is essence afraid of not being good enough? Is essence afraid of the unknown? And the answer is no. And then with essence, you can hold your seat to go deeper than you normally would with ordinary mind. When the veil is thinning and one is having, let's say, a Kensho experience or experience of oneness or those kinds of things, one of the last defenses that leaves is vigilance. It's actually one of the last defenses before you can let go. And you may know this if you have a meditation practice. You know, sometimes you'll be sitting in meditation and you can feel that elevator drop, like, the brain waves shift and you have an elevator drop, you have a falling sensation, and you might be, what's that? You pop out. Or you feel so much emptiness and so much space, and then at some point there's like, whoa, what's that? Right? It's like you start to relax, but then something catches. Something says, oh, wait. And that's where we want to work, right where that catch is. Because I was relaxing, resting, opening, and then something stopped. And so that's the edges we're playing at, is right there. Otherwise, you don't go any further. You just come back to ordinary mind and go, okay, start again, right? So it's this practice of relaxing, this deep relaxing. And to me, that relaxing is much deeper when we've learned to let go of these formations. Each time we let go of a formation and land in essence, we're actually practicing this letting go. We're actually letting go of the story of me. And we're coming to see I'm much more than the story of me, which allows us to then play in these other realms. Yeah. The last thing I want to say about a spiritual practice is beyond learning to let go and learning to let go of vigilance and fear and the what ifs so that we can play in the divine realms is the ongoing practice that we have in our intentions, or making vows. So these are places where we do cultivation of our spiritual practice. And that is, for some people, it's like cultivating the perfections, things like generosity, patience, kindness to all people, love. I'm going to practice loving everyone, even my enemies. When we make these kinds of intentions and they become our practice, they're much more, they're like a koan, like a Zen koan. They're not a means to an end. Like, may I be good today. They're living practices where the world comes in and bumps us, and we have an opportunity right there to practice, right there to be alive in our spiritual practice. So I'm reminded of the Christian practice, people asking, what would Jesus do? For me, I have a variation on it, like, how would Essence respond here? Just take that step back. How is Essence pissed off? How would Essence respond? And oftentimes Essence will have a very compassionate response. And so by doing that practice of cultivation during the day, in my life, out in the world, you end up cultivating a new way of being. So we're releasing all the things that keep us in fear, and we're cultivating a practice of being in essence or being in love or whatever the perfection is that you want to practice. And by doing this, we have a very live practice where we come to train ourselves to respond to the world rather than react. So we may take a pause for a moment or have a more thoughtful response. And gosh knows, if you look at our politics in the world today, it's filled with people having reactions. And what would it be like if each of us took the practice to be responsible, to have what's called an appropriate response, right? To take that moment to step back, check in with our essential nature. How do I really want to deal with this moment? I could call my sister right now and chew her out. Or I could take a second and breathe and ask how Essence sees her, and then make the phone call, right? So it's these two things, this purification and releasing of the fear and the beliefs that keep us small and separate, and me, I'm a little scared me who has to protect me and have greed for me, versus letting that go and seeing our essential nature, and then practicing our essential nature moment to moment in our day. And by doing these two things, we kind of meet in this place where essence ends up being more of who we are, more of how we respond to the world. And then we get to play in these realms. You're walking down the street and the veil thins and you see something really beautiful. And maybe nobody else around you sees it, but you saw it. And it just feeds you for the whole day. Yeah. So I hope this is of use to you in your spiritual practice, that you can particularly look at these formations you have and look at where you're scared to let go. Where are you scared to play and float and not know, so that you can play with this thinning of the veil? And by all means, if you have the opportunity to go on retreat and to go in places where you can let go of your life and practice, and you have that kind of privilege, by all means, I hope you take it, because retreat practice is a wonderful place to play with all of this, really beautifully. So let's just take a moment for just intention, sharing the intention of what we're doing here. And so you can close your eyes or look gently at the floor. May our willingness to work with our own fears around our spiritual practice bring us more freedom and lightness, allowing us to play with the divine in our life, creating a spiritual life, a meaningful life. And may these practices ripple out beyond us, so that all beings have an opportunity to touch their spiritual center, their essential nature, and open to their true nature, who they're meant to be. Well, thank you, everybody, and lovely to sit with you. Next week, we'll do the integrative domain, where we kind of bring it all together. And I hope you have fun with this, because not being afraid of not knowing, it opens a whole new world. Not being afraid of the unknown is really amazing and fun and beautiful, or at least that's been my experience. So, so I hope you have a lovely time with your spiritual practice. Take care, everybody.